with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. Hey, Rich, we got a really, really great show today. In just a moment, we're going to have the governor from Alaska, Mike Dunleavy. And, Alaska's really been hit hard. I mean, not in coronavirus and all of that, though, it's not, such of huge proportions in Alaska like you see in other parts of the country. Hopefully they stay safe up there. But also the oil industry is taking it on the chin. So Governor Dunleavy is going to be on, and we're going to talk about what is Alaska doing to stabilize its economy. A very, very important state. I love Alaska. I love watching those shows on Alaska and how the people are living off the grid.
Sue Aiken's my hero.
My goodness.
She's my hero.
I love it. And we could be heard in Alaska in some of the very remote areas. There's 3 different affiliates that we have in Alaska. So Alaska is a great state. And talking about affiliates, I mean, we're very, very pleased to have joining us now KSBN from Spokane, Washington. And that's just, last week we had the good folks from Lubbock, Texas, joining us, and on KRFE AM and 95.9 FM. So, wow, Rich, the show is growing. We have the governor from Alaska, and great things are happening here at Made in America.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are very exciting times. I mean, I want to get excited about that, and it's good news to have that. And it's good that we're there, because I think people need to know what's going on. They need to understand how they fit into the big game plan right now and what they can do to, participate in the rebirth. When we get on the other side of this virus, we're going to have to regrow the economy and put it back where it was. So there's a lot of work to be done, and people need information to do that.
Well, in short, we got to get America working again. And
amen to that.
So
brother.
People have talked about this V-shaped recovery, meaning that, we fell off a cliff, but we're going to go back up, quite quickly. But, the longer that this thing goes on, and some of the numbers that we're talking about now, and it just keeps getting, well, I'm an optimistic guy, but, it just keeps getting worse. And it's just like, I'm looking for that glimmer of hope. Where is that glimmer of hope? We will get to the other side of this, and we will need to get America working again, and we will get America working again. So, Rich, that's
I'm going
to
go out right now and build something, Neil. I just want you to know that. You got me so motivated.
We're very pleased to have someone, joining us who's just published a piece in the Wall Street Journal, How to Get America Working Again, a very, very important topic. We're very, very pleased to have with us Robert Kaplan, who's a professor of leadership development, emeritus at Harvard Business School. Robert, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you, Neil. Good to be with you.
Well, last week we had 3.3 million people file for unemployment. This week we've had over 6 million people. That's like 10 million in the last 2 weeks. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen next week, but there's still layoffs happening and more layoffs. So I don't know even what the projections are for next week, but it's going to be another bloodbath. It's going to be ugly. So then the question is, how do we get these people back to work? What is the path? And what is the path? And I know there's trillions of dollars being talked about, and this money is going to get out into the economy hopefully sometime soon. What's that going to do? But ultimately, we got to get our people back to work. Professor, how are we going to do that?
No, absolutely. I mean, the government $2 trillion measure is really to compensate people for the enormous financial losses they're experiencing right now, this month, through the forced shutdowns of so many enterprises. And this can't go on for very long. We're just kind of crushing not just companies, but the people who work for them. And so clearly the testing has to be very important. And the politicians are very, very fearful of restarting the economy if subsequently they're going to be blamed for thousands or tens of thousands of people falling sick with this virus. So we have to have ways of testing when people truly are infected and then be able then to pull them out of the workforce so they don't infect other people. And, we just fell behind the curve because of the delays in testing capacity that we had, relative to other countries. And so we could look to Singapore as a model where they got exposed earlier. They were closer to China. But by having a lot of testing capabilities, they enabled everyone to keep working and children to go to schools. But at the first sign of an illness, they would test and then pull them out if it turns out that they were infected and isolate them. And of course, the virus isn't hitting uniformly across all the country. It's clearly hit very heavily in New York, northern New Jersey, and beginning to hit, also New Orleans or Chicago. But there's large swatches of the country where it hasn't hit. Perhaps people are not infected, and it might be safe to let them go back to work, as long as we know that they're not likely to either come down with the disease or spread it to other people. So but once we get our testing capacity geared up, and we're testing more than what we're even doing today, then it starts to become feasible to allow enterprises to reopen.
Well, I think that's very important, and the good news is we are getting a lot more testing done today, and new and better tests, like Abbott Labs has one out that's basically about 45 minutes to find out whether you've got it, and you can self-do this and take it in. It tells you right away if you test positive or not, which is great. But I will say, and I think you're right, Robert, that we have to get this economic engine vibrant again. And I don't know, I can't remember in current history that we actually shut down, the American economy. I mean, we're just saying don't work. And so how do you get that engine flowing again?
Yeah. Any previous time we went to war, we geared up our economic activity. We didn't shut it down.
Exactly.
And so this is unusual, but it was unusual in that first we had the supply shock where we were no longer able to source materials from China. And then, we shut down the economy. We got a demand shock as people stopped spending on lots of things and stopped using transportation, restaurants, hotels, and now even small retailers. So, we could certainly think, construction employs 17.5 million people, or it did last month. And much of construction jobs, people are already physically distanced from each other. And yet we shut that down across the board in many, many states. And we need construction. We need our roads built and our bridges and tunnels repaired. And as long as people can go back and operate in a safe way, then we can think about that sector being opened up. And there are hundreds of thousands of small retailers, and they only employ, one or two people. And again, they have natural physical distancing. There just aren't many of them around. And, those stores are closed now, and, those people can't get paid, and the rest of us can't go there to shop and buy the products and services we need. So by being more selective as to which enterprises we allowed to open, and do it in a, somewhat safe way, at least we get people back to work and off government subsidies.
Well, Professor, it seems to me like the media is really, really pressuring the governors. And any governor that's not just totally closing down the state is getting beat up relentlessly in the media, right? And I'm thinking about Governor DeSantis in Florida. And, he was slow because he's saying, hey, look, there's a lot of parts of our state, it's not the coronavirus, it's not huge. And so we're letting the various counties decide what to do. The media really took him to task and continues to take him to task for trying to let some economic activity go on, like the type of stuff that you're talking about. And there's just so much peer pressure right now just to shut everything down.
No, and it is it's really a terrible situation, but one that's difficult to avoid because, if you find one or two people that get sick and die, then they can say that's on the show and they say, you killed this person.
That's right.
What they don't see is the tens of millions of people who are, in a way, suffering at home without income, without jobs, and in fact, their health is deteriorating. So we know from previous studies that people who are forced into unemployment They suffer more substance abuse, depression, hypertension, and downstream.
Suicide.
And their health is and leading to suicide. But see, that's kind of hidden. It doesn't make the 6 o'clock news. And so the media are only looking at one side of this, the most visible, sensational side, and not balancing that on the terrible harm being done now to probably over 100 million Americans, and the downstream costs of that. And so, it is a difficult situation, and that's why we have to be able to demonstrate. The governor has to be able to demonstrate, look, every person we send back to work, we've tested them, that they're not infected, they're not going to spread it. If they show any symptoms, we'll be able to detect it quickly and send them home so no one else gets sick and they can be treated if it gets serious. And the other point on this, and this maybe sounds a little bit cruel, if you look at the age distribution of not who catches this disease, but who ends up dying from it, 90% of the people are over the age of 70. In Massachusetts, up till yesterday, we had 122 deaths, and 121 of those were people 50 years old or above, 100 of them 70 and above. And the only one under 50 was already compromised with asthma and other physical conditions. So as bad as this condition is, it actually is not fatal to almost all young, healthy workers, if they happen to come down with the disease, and that's not been recognized.
Hey, Robert, we're going to have to take a quick break, and we love your thoughts. Robert Kaplan, a professor of leadership development emeritus at Harvard Business School. He's with us right now. We still got a lot more to talk about with the professor. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Roffman, and we would like to join or welcome the station that has just joined us and all the great listeners from Spokane, Washington, KSBN. Welcome aboard. It's going to be a wild, wild ride. And we're together with Professor Kaplan, who's a professor of leadership development emeritus at Harvard Business School. So much to talk about. Great ideas on how to get America back to work. So, Professor, one thing I'd like to ask is this, is I'm an entrepreneur, and I don't know how many jobs we're going to lose as a result of this, but I do know that a lot of the companies are going to find ways to do with less employees, right? Because you're forced into this, and then you're taking a look and saying, well, hey, look, is this thing going to come back? Is this going to come back in the fall? Is it going to come back in the winter? Am I going to contend with this? So, I might have had to lay off or furlough, I'll pick a number, 100 of my employees, but, I'm only going to bring back 50 and kind of see how things go. And people will just learn to do more with less people. And then the other thing that you have to consider, especially if you're in retail, how many of your customers are going to be coming back into business? And then how will they be staffed? And will they be also taking the same way of just saying, hey, look, we're going to have to do more with less people. And some customers are not going to make it. They're going to go bankrupt. So you're not going to have them to sell to anymore. So my whole point is, I don't think that we're going to get back, job for job. And if we do, it's going to take a while. What do you think?
No, I think that's a good analysis, and I think there'll be a permanent shift. I mean, we're not going to revert back to the economy as it was in February of this year. More people are getting used to shopping from home and not shopping face-to-face in retail establishment. More people are used to working at home, so there'll be less demand for transportation and airline travel, much as well as travel within the city. So what we'll learn, and health will be delivered differently. By necessity, physicians and nurses are learning how to deliver care, not to the COVID patients, but all other patients, from home using telehealth. And people are getting used to receiving care, through their mobile apps and their desktop, not by having to visit an office. So there'll be lots of permanent changes there, and that means jobs are going to shift around as we adapt to all those changes.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Every time we, for example, when Obamacare came about a few years ago, Neil and I talked about the unintended consequences of what that would do. In this case, there are going to be unintended consequences. One, I agree. I don't think all the jobs are going to come back. Two, I think the behaviorisms that people are developing right now are going to be more predominant than they were before. And that is why people such as right now, Amazon, Walmart, Kroger, 7-Elevens are all desperate for workers. Kroger, Papa John's these are people who are looking for Walgreens, 100,000 more people, Walmart, 150,000 more people. Amazon wanted 100,000 more people a few weeks ago because the delivery part of that retail is mushrooming, obviously. And so people, I think you're right, Doctor, that I think that as we move forward, people are going to change what they're doing. They're not going to be going to the retailers even more than they weren't before because the big box was moving and changing before this occurred. And now they're going to be using it more and more. I mean, to be perfectly honest, except for going to Publix for, daily things or weekly things that I need, everything I get now is on the Internet.
Yeah. So everything. It does mean, so the small retail shops are being very adversely affected. First of all, right now, they had to shut down. They don't have lines of credit with the bank. They don't have cash reserves. So unless the money from the government reaches them quickly to enable them just to stay afloat, they will go out of business permanently. And then, as you were just pointing out, the demand for their retail service products and services, in a local storefront will likely decrease. It's just too easy and too convenient to work with the very large retailers and distributors.
Professor, and here's a thought. I mean, we've put so many trillions in the economy. I mean, it's making your head spin, and I don't know where this is going to end up. But I'd like to get your thoughts on this infrastructure bill that the president has been talking about.
$2.2 trillion.
On infrastructure spending. Is this the right time to do that? I mean, that would be a huge shot in the arm. And, put a lot of construction people to work, as you just mentioned earlier in a previous segment. So, what do you think about that?
Both parties have talked about having infrastructure for 5 years now. I mean, it started in the Obama administration, continued here, and the two parties have never been able to come together with a bill that would really spend that money. It would be tremendously important because, again, a lot of those are relatively low-skilled jobs, so you can quickly absorb lots of people currently hurting a great deal from this shutdown and get them to work quickly, and we need the infrastructure. You were talking about we're going to be doing more distribution, more delivery, so those roads are going to get used a lot by very heavy trucks. That it's something we should do. Try to find a way to do it that's not just a direct subsidy of the government, perhaps by, with gasoline prices, oil prices coming down, that putting a little more tax on gasoline to pay for this, or a substantial part of it, this would be an appropriate time to try to do that and put highway construction and infrastructure construction on a more sustainable financial basis.
And, just in a very, very brief moment, are you worried about all these trillions?
Well, sure. I mean, there are some people who think that
15 seconds.
At zero prices is, zero interest is free. Well, it's not free. These things eventually have to get repaid or limit your ability for future borrowing. And we want to reduce the role of government, in our lives. And so we have to be able to start pulling away from government being the source of income and back to private enterprise as being the source of people's income.
Well said. Robert Kaplan, Professor of Leadership Development, Emeritus at Harvard Business School. Professor, thanks for being on the show. Great voice. We love to hear your thoughts, and you're very, very valuable to these discussions.
Good to be with you, Neil and Rich.
Coming up, we have Governor Dunleavy from Alaska, Rich, the great, great state of Alaska, and he's going to talk about the economic stabilization plan for Alaska, one of our great states. You don't want to miss it. Governor Dunleavy coming up right now.
Made in America.
sharply higher at the open. Stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. And as promised, we are having an exceptional show today. Well, we always have exceptional shows, but today's extra special. It's extra special because the good folks at KSBN from Spokane, Washington are joining us, our newest affiliate. And just last week, the folks from KRFE in Lubbock, Texas. So, Rich, we are on a roll. Made in America is growing, and we're now going to move to one of my favorite states, a great state, such a bunch of hardy people, one of the most beautiful states in our union. And I'm talking about Alaska. And we're very pleased to have on the governor of Alaska, Mike Dunleavy. Governor, welcome to Made in America.
Oh, it's great to be on your show, Neil.
I got to tell you, I love watching the Alaska shows. I mean, all of them. I mean, you just got a state with so much natural beauty, and the people up there. I mean, they're such a hoot. I mean, you must have the greatest job in the world to be their governor. But this is a difficult time. Yeah. But this is a
difficult time.
And what's going on? You know, you got hit with a double whammy, right? I mean, we got coronavirus. On top of that, you got the oil prices that's being depressed, and I know that's a big part of your economy. So, how are you coping?
Well, that is truly it's amazing, because just a few weeks ago, we had some of the best economic indicators in the state's history, just as the country did. The Friday before we had to start making announcements regarding this virus, we were informed that we had the lowest foreclosure rate in 50 years. We had the record lowest unemployment in the state's history. We've had billions of dollars of investment in our conventional oil patch on the North Slope. We were once the largest producers of oil in the United States for many, many years. And all of this was going really well, and then the virus hit. And, of course, we weren't prepared for it from a healthcare system standpoint, so we had to basically, by government decree, shut down the economy to keep people away from each other, to buy us time to build up this healthcare system. And as a result, across the country, our economy is just turned upside down. And so, one of the things that we're doing a lot of things. You know, what we're doing is trying to keep the relationship between the worker and the business, especially the small business in your hospitality industries, your restaurants, your bars, your hotels, but other industries as well. And we're doing that through a stabilization process. We don't expect this economy to grow. No one does. But what we want to do is we want to make sure it doesn't fall apart. So we want to stabilize it. And we're getting help from the federal government, as we know, but we're also doing some work here in the state of Alaska through a couple loan programs and some programs, again, from the feds that I think are going to help tremendously to stabilize this economy over the next few months. But, again, we don't know how long this is going to last.
Well, I would think, this is Rich talking, and good to have you on the show, Governor.
Thank you.
As Neil stated, I love Alaska, and I actually am a subscriber of the Anchorage Daily News.
Wow.
I am.
I didn't know that.
Because I love the Iditarod. And so I presume the governor has a dog, I'm sure, somewhere.
We all have dogs up here.
You got to have a dog, or you can't be in Alaska. But it's very hard. I would think, from your point of view, it's very hard to tell people not to work. It's very hard to tell, particularly hardy people like Alaskans. It's very hard to tell them you can't function, and you can't work.
And you got to stay home.
Oh, and by the way, you're going to have to survive for we don't know how long. I don't think that's an easy decision. How do you what goes through your mind when you make a decision like that? Because the impact of your words are just incredible.
Yeah, no, it is. Who would have? Nobody would have ever thought they'd face this in our lifetime. 1918 they did, but you're right. From a whole host of reasons, we don't like to be told what to do as Americans. We're a free people. In Alaska, we really don't like to be told what to do. And who wants to shut down the economy? We know that we're dealing with two disasters simultaneously. One is the health, but also to address the health, you create. It's a self-created disaster in order to buy ourselves time. So it's difficult. It's not easy. I have to give Alaskans a lot of credit. They're doing really well. If you look at our numbers in terms of a state, and yeah, we do have a small population, but we're doing pretty good at keeping this virus down so we can build up our healthcare capabilities. But The president is right. I know he gets people give him a hard time, but you cannot shut the world down, the country down, and the state of Alaska down, and expect us to continue with our lifestyle. It simply doesn't happen. So we're looking at the day, and it's going to have to be sooner than later, that we start to ease people back into working. And so, for example, just real quick, what we set up in Alaska is, it's not a total shutdown in your house and you're looking out the window. If you can stay 6 feet away from everybody else, you can do your work. You can live your life if you stay 6 feet away from everyone else. And so there are some businesses that are operating, but many of them are right now. Many of them are frozen.
Frozen, to coin a phrase.
There you go. That's apropos.
Yeah.
But not to make light of that, but is the state being, so spread out, so much, space, and that's what we love about Alaska. It's just so spread out, so beautiful. Is that helping with coronavirus because people are not concentrated as much? Is that helping you or hurting you? Because if you do have problems, then you have to take people and transport them maybe large, long distances.
No, I think in this case it helps, and I'll tell you why, and I'll demonstrate. You have a similar situation in the Dakotas and Wyoming, states that have populations that are spread out. When you look at states that don't, New York City, where they're on top of each other, Seattle, where they're on top of each other, New Orleans, where they're on top of each other, that's a problem for those folks, unfortunately. But here in Alaska, we look out the window. I'm looking out the window of my office, and I see people walking their dogs. They're staying at least 6 feet, 10 feet away from each other. People are snowmobiling, people are skiing, people are hiking, people are ice fishing. You can do all those things as long as you stay 6 feet away. And it's a little easier in Alaska because, first of all, a lot of the people that live here obviously like the outdoors. And we have a lot of space. And so that's very helpful. And a number of the jobs also allow you to be by yourself. And so that's helpful as well. But make no mistake about it. Alaska's economy, the biggest sectors in Alaska's economy would be oil and gas, tourism and cruise ships, the fishing industry. These are all taking a beating right now as a result of this pandemic.
Governor, we need to take a quick break. Can you hang with us for a few more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Hey, we're with Governor Dunleavy of Alaska. So much to talk about. They're doing a great job up there, one of our most beautiful, productive states. Governor Dunleavy is going to be with us just in a moment. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin, and we are together with Governor Dunleavy from the great state of Alaska. Still so much to talk about. You don't want to miss this. Governor, Rich and I have been very, very strong proponents of America's energy independence and how amazing that is. And, all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world with Iran and with Iraq and with Venezuela. And could you imagine just some years ago, if all three of those markets were closed for producing oil, what that would have done to the American economy, what it would have done to the world economy. But places like Alaska and the Dakotas, which you just mentioned, have really stepped up and made the United States an energy net exporting country. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Who would have thought about that? How important, you just mentioned about the energy industry in Alaska. What are the prices of $20 a barrel doing to the industry up in your state?
One, rethink everything. It's like a new world we woke up to, and so we don't know what this price war between Russia and the Saudis are going to do to oil worldwide. We don't know what it's going to do to the fractors down in the lower 48. Alaska is a conventional field. It's almost its own independent play, as they say. We came into existence during the right after the oil shocks, the Arab oil embargoes, and those oil shocks in the early 70s. We did in the
73, yeah, I remember that very well. I remember those odd even days to get gasoline.
Yeah, I remember as a kid having to sit in the car for hour or two waiting to get the gas with my parents. But we came into being at that time, and so we helped shore up some of the oil for the United States of America. We lost production over the years because the fields have aged, but we started to have a renaissance up here the last couple of years, and actually our production was anticipated to go up by 200,000 to 300,000 barrels over the next several years. We hope that's still the case. It is conventional oil. It's different than what's happening in the Permian, but we're all going to have to rethink and see what happens here and follow where this pandemic goes over the next couple months.
Well, the one good thing about this whole thing with the oil and what happened towards the end of this week is that the Saudis and the Russians have reached an agreement, according to CNBC, as we're talking right now. And
are they really?
Yeah. So oil's gone up 24% as I'm speaking to you right now, which is great. But I think if you think long term, and I think these oil guys think long term anyway, because the investment takes a while, the work takes a while, and you've got to look out to see where you're going to go with your investment and the results of that. But, God bless all those guys who are doing that, both, in the mainland United States and up in Alaska, because they have created the ability for us to be a net exporter of energy. That is a remarkable position for this country to be in for lots and lots of reasons. Yeah. Aside from the fact we take care of ourselves now. We're not subject to what goes on in the Mideast or any place else in the world. But politically speaking, it's an incredible leverage stick that our government has in dealing with Russia and other folks out there to affect the things that we want to do and perhaps keep people in line. So I would think that's a very important stabilization component to what you're doing up in Alaska.
Yeah, so it is, and again, to produce oil up here it costs more than other places, obviously, because of our climate, our distance, our lack of infrastructure. We are at the top of the world. But nonetheless, we have very good infrastructure, and we have a super giant up there at Prudhoe Bay, and we do have other fields, satellite fields, that we are discovering more and more oil, billions of barrels of oil. So we have the infrastructure, we have the capacity, we have the shipping, we have everything in place. It survived an earthquake here, two big earthquakes, and one about a year ago, a 7.2 on the Richter scale. So we got what it takes to produce the oil. We're just hoping that the world can find some balance, so that we're not being whipsawed back and forth like we have the past couple of years.
In Florida, down in South Florida, this week at Costco, I got gas for $1.65 a gallon. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know what that is for inflation adjusted. That's probably the price back in the 70s. I don't know, but has the administration, Governor, this administration, made it easier for you to do business? Have they relaxed regulation, and are you worried that it could turn the other way?
No, I think the Trump administration has been the best administration for the state of Alaska since statehood, and that's a fact.
Really? That's a big statement.
Yes, every time it is, because it's true. Every time the president goes to Asia, he stops at Anchorage because it's an international fueling spot. And we meet. I get to go on Air Force One, and when we meet, it's not a photo op. It's not a political, jawing. It's Mike, what can I do for Alaska? What do you guys need to help create more jobs in Alaska? What do you need to create more wealth? And so Alaska, for example, has a lot of rare earths. We have the largest commercial graphite deposit in the entire nation. We rely on China for 97% of our rare earths and our graphite. The president sees this, realizes this, wants to make the country strong, wants to make Alaska strong as part of it. And so we've been having these conversations for some time. And so, no, he's been very good. He helped open up ANWR, which we couldn't get opened up for decades for lease sales and oil exploration. He's helping us with our largest national forest in the country, in the Tongass, to try and get that up and running again. Been very good for Alaska. And again, if this pandemic did not come on the horizon, Alaska was pointed in a direction that would have created wealth, created a lot of jobs, and put us on a pretty good footing going forward.
Well, Governor, with your leadership and President Trump, and it seems like you guys get along really well, it will happen again. And I love that rare earth comment because I did not know that. And my goodness, that seems to be like in our national security interest. We got to get Alaska producing.
Yes, exactly, and that's what we're working on. And this thing is going to be temporary, folks. This is not the end of the world. We'll learn to incorporate this and live with it. It's just we got to just get this taken care of over the next couple of months.
Governor, well said. Hey, your incredible job you're doing. Incredible job you're doing. Governor Dunleavy from the great state of Alaska. Governor, we really appreciate your time today. You've been very generous to us.
Come back and visit.
Thank you. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I will have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. So, Rich, I mean, that's a beautiful image. I mean, that would be absolutely great. You're the governor of Alaska. We just had Governor Dunleavy on with us. Air Force One is landing in Anchorage. The president invites you on while they're refueling and says, Governor, what can I do to help your state grow? What can I do?
Talk about a captive audience. Oh, my God. Well, I mean, and the opening line, how could you lose with that?
Yeah.
That's a win.
How can I help you make your state grow? How can we create jobs up here? How can we create wealth? How can we create prosperity? I mean, wow, imagine that. Imagine what it must feel like, to see the Air Force One kind of flying and landing, knowing you're going to go and get on the plane, and the president is going to embrace what you do and say, how can I help you? How can I help you make your state a better place and help the whole of the United States? And the thing that I learned today, which was very fascinating, is Alaska's got all these rare earth deposits.
That is great for us.
We always hear how China is got us, over the barrel because of rare earth. Nobody's talking about, well, Alaska can, take out China. Why?
Well, maybe because it was in vogue to do that. Maybe because
you have all the answers always.
Maybe we had globalists. The globalist elites are telling us that we have to do things overseas. But I got to tell you something, Neil. This viral environment that we're in right now, this Chinese virus, Wuhan virus, let's be clear about that. It emanates from China. Is going to force people to rethink what they're doing. Number one, our pharmaceutical industry cannot stay in China. We cannot be at the mercy of the Chinese government, who, if you think about it, long term, they don't like us. They look out 50 years, 100 years, they don't care. Their long-term deal is they don't like us. They are a competing economic sector out there, complete sector out there. And so they don't want us to succeed. I'm sorry they don't, but they don't. And a lot of our rare earths, a lot of special metals come from China. Wouldn't it be great if we can bring that back here and have the frontier, the concept of the new frontier being Alaska, be leading the way in that? What a great opportunity for Alaska and a phenomenal opportunity for the United States.
Well, Rich, not to switch gears on you, but everything you said is right. But, we got to all find a way to get along, though. I mean, we all got to get along here. And I don't know what it is. I mean, there's always going to be rivalries, and there are going to be people, who are kind of against this or against that or for this or for that. But ultimately, we share the world with each other. And, from a health perspective, all these things, we just cannot allow these things to happen. Because as we found out, if something happens in one part of the world, although it seems to be a very remote place and a place that, is so far away, it's only going to bother with them. No, it's not. It's because of travel and people engaging all around the world. Everybody's, getting with each other. And it's amazing how quickly these things can spread.
China's not that far away. I mean, you think about that. The world has really changed. Define far away.
Well,
far away, 15 and a half hours, and I'm in Hong Kong.
That's right.
I'm in Hong Kong.
But
we've done that. We've all done that.
But once you get to Wuhan, you start coming back the other way. So it's about as far away as you can get. But you're right. But it's a connected
somebody
world.
Can be anywhere in the world in 24 hours. It makes no difference.
Yes. In the old paradigm, it was like the other side of the world. If you drilled a hole, you would come out back in the United States, because you're as far away as you can get. But in the new paradigm is that we are so connected. We're only hours away from each other, and we can see what happens. So if we're not working together, if we're not coordinating together, this thing can get out of control very fast. And that's what we've seen with the coronavirus.
Well, yes. And the truth of the matter is, if the Chinese had been more open with the world, and us particularly, and admitted what they were really doing and how contagious it really was, we could have stopped this months ago. And it didn't have to hit the United States and the rest of the world as hard as it did. Yeah. So if we're going to get along, it would be nice in quotation marks, for the other country to actually be honest with us. Not all the time, but when it comes to health stuff, you got to be straight.
Well, I mean, you've seen
got to be straight.
You've seen Mayor De Blasio of your ex-home, Manhattan. Well, of the mayor of New York City, but of course, with his offices in Manhattan, saying just in the middle of March, hey, look, man, it's only 100 people. Go out and do everything you're doing.
There's nothing there. Don't worry about it. The woman who's in charge of his entire health for the city said there's nothing to it. It's not contagious.
But my point is that, it's so hard. It's so hard. Nobody saw it coming. And anyway, hopefully the world will change for the better when this is all over. Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we want to thank and welcome our listeners of KSBN in Spokane, Washington, and our listeners at KRFE in Lubbock, Texas. We're really, really happy that you're with us. It's going to be a wonderful journey together. Economic freedom. It's economic freedom. How do we build prosperity through economic freedom? That's what we're all about here at Made in America. But unfortunately, we're out of time for today. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.